Welcome you to the Gavel Drops studio. So let's be transparent. I like to be transparent with everyone as we do it. This is the second attempt around, to be fair. We had a great conversation, and we touched on loads of different things, from where you come from, your family, to where you are now, to what your goals are, to what you've kind of sold to get to where your goals. And it was a brilliant episode. But then we got it back, and it was just the recording wasn't perfect. I've sent it away. I've had my IT guy look at it. So we're back again. And even today wasn't plain sailing. We're now doing games rather than through what we usually do. But we're here, we're doing it. So let's start. Yeah, third time lucky. Let's do it. Because obviously everyone sees you now as the property guy, property guru, the property expert in what you're doing. Where did it actually start from you as the first journey started?
All right. Okay. Well, firstly, Ray, thanks for having me on again. And expert is quite I don't know, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in anything in that sense, but I feel like in terms of where it started, I feel like I had quite a lot of pain points in my first career, and I just wanted a way out. And I thought property was a great vehicle for me to get out of my pharmacy career, because I studied for 5 years, worked as a pharmacist for 4, and then I kind of thought to myself, like, I can't keep doing the same thing I kept doing every day in, day out. Felt like it was quite repetitive. So then I just started to invest into property, and then I've kind of built a business all around that. And I try to inspire or try to show my journey as honestly as possible, like through Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn and places like that.
Yeah, it's a given. So you were a pharmacy to start with. What made you, was it, because obviously that's a long year to get to where you wanted to get to, isn't it? And then you get there, and what is it, just not what you thought, or was it just actually you thought I could do more, or I wanted to be more?
So being from like an Asian Punjabi household, you only have like 3 choices when it comes to being something in your life. It's whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. And I didn't get any of them. I became a pharmacist. So I didn't get the grades to get any of them. So what happened, it's like I didn't really want to become a pharmacist. It was just like what I could achieve with the grades that I got. So then I went there, and don't get me wrong, I don't regret any of it, because I wouldn't be in the position that I am now if it wasn't for that. But I just felt like once I was in the career, it was a downward trajectory when it comes to the work, in terms of like increased workload, decreased pay, and also the appreciation around the NHS, the appreciation with, let's say, the amount of pressure that we was getting from patients and from GP practices. I feel like the pharmacy career is going down a path of where it could be quite dangerous as well. So I just felt like overworked, overstressed, and I wasn't getting the reward at the end of every month. It wasn't equating to it, especially with the amount of knowledge and the amount of time and effort we put into the career, going through university, going through the training programs. And then I just thought maybe I should try to do something else on the side. But now that side hustle has become my main hustle.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I am now.
So now you've leapt into the world of property. Do you think what you studied and being meticulous in what you were doing, as in being a pharmacist, has it put you in good stead, for instance, to be like meticulous about? Because I think a lot of people, when it comes to property, they're not meticulous about figures or refurb costs, or they let things run away and go, oh, don't worry about that. And I think that's what they end up. So your first deal, what was it like? Were you still doing pharmacy as well, or had you just gone all in?
No, so I was still doing pharmacy as well. So this was in back end of 2023. First deal was a BRR deal. It was a 3-bed terraced property in Hartlepool, which is a place in the northeast. I bought it for £75,000, and this was pre-auction as well. I was speaking to the company, and I just said, right, I want to just put my offer in. I'd like to take it off the auction. I'd like to go ahead. So bought it for 75. Then I did a 25 renovation, 25,000, and then it's now revalued at 140. It's rented now for £800 a month. So I've kind of pulled out all of my money except around about £6,000. So on my socials, and my YouTube as well, I've written a title, How I Bought the Property for £6,000. And then everyone's like, oh, you can't buy a property for £6,000. You're a liar. You're cheating the system. And then when I broke it down, it's like you put in X amount of money, but then the bank gives you Y, but then the difference is £6,000. So it's like I've only spent a net of £6,000, and then people was like, oh wow, this is a great strategy to do. But I've not done that type of deal since. That was like a really good deal, like leaving in such a small amount of money.
So your first deal is like, so you know when you're doing deals now, do you compare it to your first one? Because a lot of people go, my first deal usually they don't do well on, and then all the other deals after, because they've learned so much, kind of they look back and go, I remember that one. But do you look the other way now?
I try not to compare, because that was almost like a unicorn deal. And if I kept striving for that type of deal, then I wouldn't have done as many transactions as I've done. And I just said to myself, I was like, the way I think of it is like just take an action. And if I didn't take action that day and I just kept thinking about the perfect deal, which doesn't exist, I wouldn't have got the first one, especially during my pharmacy career, because I was doing 2 things at once. Now I look at deals in a way of, what's the fundamentals? What's the area like? How is it going to perform in the next 5 years? I try not to look at things like year one ROI. I feel like year one return on investment is quite skewed. Looking at it from a long-term perspective is quite important, especially when it comes to property, because I never got into property just to do it once or twice and just and then continue with pharmacy. I think about it like in the next 20, 25 years. So the properties I buy now, they might not be as good as the first one, but the fundamentals are solid. Good area, good rental, and still decent return on investment as well. Because the stuff that I do, even though I've done like flips and HMOs, I feel like my main strategy, and I'd like to double down on, is the buy to let and the BRR strategy. I feel like the simple stuff for me, especially in the area that I live in, is really, really good. HMOs I've done, flips I've done, but there is a little bit more risk in there involved and a lot more capital needed at the start. But I just feel like my buy-to-let portfolio and the BRR stuff has performed really well since I've started. And I just thought I just might as well double down on that.
Go into that. So flip-wise, how did you find the flips? Was it, have they done you, have you made money? Have you broke even? Have you lost? It's like what? Because I think the market's different now, isn't it? Compared to even 2023. What deals are out there is totally different to what they were.
Yeah, so I haven't done many flips. I think I've done roughly 4 or 5 flips in the past 2-3 years. And you said, have I made money? Have I broke even? Have I lost? All 3. So all 3, that's happened to me. And fundamentally, I just thought like the properties, or the way I look at the properties over time, has definitely changed. Like one property, I didn't know what subsidence was. I bought it on the auction, and I think this was like a lack of knowledge, a lack of experience at the time. And I got a level 3 structural survey on it, and then I heard this word subsidence, And then I kind of went into a rabbit hole, and then this is the property that I lost money on. Didn't lose too much money. I think it was like roughly like £3,000 to £4,000 overall. But it was a big learning curve for me as well. The good thing with that property is that it wasn't like it didn't need underpinning. All the problem was that I needed another drainage survey, and the drains needed to be fixed. Yeah, and the drainage was collapsed over time. But that was a great property for me to like stick my teeth in, kind of understand, what a flip can look like, and obviously where things can go wrong. And that I learned a lot from that as well. I've showcased a lot of this, like this flip on my Instagram as well. So it's like I've kind of shown the world, like, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But there are I've got a flip on at the moment that's still on the market, so I'm a little bit wary. I'll put it on the market in November. It's still on the market now. We've had to reduce the price by £15,000, but the numbers on that are really good. So it was a 4-bed semi that we bought for 180. We did a 60 to £65,000 renovation, and now it's on the market for 330. So there's a big margin there, and there's some money to be made. However, like you said, Ray, the market at the moment is a bit sticking, so I'll probably stay away from the flips now.
I think it's that the thing with the market is it's like it's surprisingly, like, we found it in the auctions where it's like years ago, or even a couple of years, maybe last year, the start of last year, you'd be able to over egg it a little bit. So you'd put a little bit more than what you would, and you'd still get a bit of interest and potentially get it away. Whereas now you just can't. It's kind of do or die, as in it's literally you either get interest or you get nothing. And it is a strange, like as I was saying before we started, like we sold one at the start of the year with a guy that was, what, 900 grand, went for over 1 million, and we had 8 people wanting to buy it. On the same auction, we had a little 2-bed terrace in Liverpool at 40, 50 grand, and we had like 3 people wanting to buy it. Now you don't, and it's the thing, isn't it? And I think it's more property related, as in specific property now, than it's ever been. Because years ago, an auction you'd have had 1 or 2 people wanting to buy £1 million property in an auction, and the bottom, you've always got loads of people wanting to buy. So it is kind of very. So with the market now, as you say, you're in the market, you're trying to sell. What's been the feedback of these? Have you had much interest in it viewing wise? What's been the feedback? Because obviously I thought you presume the fully refurbished ones would sell quite quick because no one needs to do nothing, do they?
The honest feedback from that exact property that I mentioned, is that it's a lovely refurbished property. Some people might not like, because there's a pub about, I wouldn't say like 200 meters away. So it's like there's a pub there. People say, "Oh, I don't want to live next to a pub," but even though it's like a really renowned pub and an establishment. So that was one feedback. Another feedback that we had was that they want the garden to be done up nicely. But what we've done was we've kind of like fixed all the fencing, removed all the rubbish, and just put gravel down, and just to kind of give it like a blank canvas. But however, if we spend, let's say, between 4 to 4,500 on a new garden, that will not, we won't be able to put the price up and get our money back. So it's one of those things where we haven't had the best luck in terms of the viewers and wanting to put an offer in. One guy did say, "I'll pay the asking price." However, they've got a property that they want to sell, but they've not put it on the market yet. So they've not they've not marketed their property to sell. So I'm like, right, so that we need to wait for that to sell, then you can give us the money for this one. It's just like the timeline is not there. And Ray, what's really important to say about this property is that we're on a bridge. So therefore time is of the essence.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think because I've noticed there's a lot of property on the market, isn't it? There's a lot of property sitting on the market. So buyers who are in a position to buy have a lot more stock to look at. And I think that's the thing I think that's probably one of the weirdest things, isn't it, with the estate agency is the estate agent will let people go round, get feedback from someone literally who can't buy.
Yeah.
It's like you wouldn't go to a car dealership and say, listen, I want to buy that Lamborghini, but I've got to sell this mine first, and I've got to sell this, and I've got to sell my kidney, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do that. I do want to buy it because it's not that. But in property, you know, I mean, we get it now. People go, well, can I buy an auction, but I've got a house to sell? And we're like, well, no, because you need the funds in place.
Yeah.
So the BRR deal, as you say, the deals you're doing now, they've been, you probably, because obviously, so you went from your first deal, which was buy, refurbish, refinance, rent out, and then did you go straight into a HMO deal after that?
Yeah, that's what I did. So 6 months after I bought my first buy to let, I just said, you know what? I see all these HMO developers. I see them do all these conversions, and I said, oh, I want a piece of that. So I did it myself. That was a 3-bed terraced in Newcastle. That was also that was in the auction. I bought it. So I was like bidding online. And I did a little. I did a little bit of like psychology in how I bought it. My max bid was 130. I just said, you know what? Let me just put an extra grand in, because if his max bid's 130, my extra grand might win the deal. So that's what happened. So I won it for 131, and then I spent about 110 on the refurb. So it went from a 3-bed to a 6-bed, all ensuite HMO, professional let, feature walls, like really, really high spec. I wanted to be like Instagrammable in that sense. So and now it's revalued at a commercial valuation at 315. It's all fully let, and each room's on average between 600 to 650. So that's like a good property to hold, where it's in a great area, and the way I've kind of done it up, it hasn't had any void periods because it's like one of the best on the street. But I haven't done any HMO since. I feel like that was a great property for me to obviously learn again, get my hands stuck into a larger development, a larger refurbishment, and then I kind of saw the pros and cons of doing something like that. But that was a really good deal because that was also a BRR, so I kind of pulled out most of my money, and then with that money, I just put it into the next deal.
That's a big jump, isn't it, to go from like your first deal then into HMOs, and then after that, was it like a flip? Did you go to, or was you were you in your mind going, listen, I'm going to do the small buy to let first, HMO, flip, done it all to find out the quickest I can do it all, then I can find out actually what do I want to do.
That's exactly it. So I have a thing in my head. It's like I always want to be vertical scaling. So instead of me doing maybe 2 to 5 buy to lets and then be comfortable and then step up to the HMO, I just said, let me just do a buy to let, HMO, flip, and then exactly what you said. Right, what do I like? And then I realized very quickly is that the simple stuff is what I like. And there's like I said, there's pros and cons to everything. Like with HMOs, you know, let's say if one, two, three people don't rent your rooms out, it could very skew it would definitely skew the numbers. Same with the flip, you know, there's a looming kind of conscious risk on your head. Like, are we able to get a buyer on the back end? But with the buy to let and the BRR strategy, it's like you're controlling the whole thing. And especially, you know, people might say, oh, but what if it doesn't get rented? In the Northeast, like, I kid you not, every property that we've put on for rent, whether it's our own, whether it's for our investors and the ones that we've kind of sourced and helped other investors with, we've rented within 2 weeks, always, where the tenant has moved in 2 weeks, they've paid the deposit. The rental demand in the Northeast is just insane.
Yeah.
We do our numbers very conservatively. So before we buy a property, we look at the numbers, let's say between 700 to 750 rent, and then that's what it is at the time. And then let's say 6 to 8 months later, once it's all done up and all nice and fresh, we get applications in for 795 or 825. So it's about 50 to 75 pounds more than we originally predicted. And that's just because the rents are just increasingly going higher. There isn't enough housing in this area, and especially good housing. We never do social housing. And the spec that we do our houses is like very similar to the ones that I did with the HMO. It's like the buy to lets are also at a very good spec where we might put Egyptian cotton on the walls, or we might put paneling on the walls. We might put a really nice like band 2 kitchen. You know, usually we get them from like Howdens or Magnet, and we put maybe some like really nice cladding in the bathrooms, like not the cheap flimsy cladding, like the big nice sheets, and you know, with the nice designs. And like I said, because I'm showcasing all of my refurbishments and my developments, I want it to make it look nice. So in my head, it's like, if it looks crap,
Yeah.
then someone's going to be like, oh well, what he does, it looks crap. But if I'm doing it, I'm at a really high standard and I'm showcasing it, it really helps on our GDVs. It also helps with our rent. And that's what I've noticed. Like, I don't want to be that person that cuts corners, especially in the refurbishment. I really want to make sure that, like, I walk into this house once it's all done up, and I say to myself, would I rent this place? And 10 times out of 10 it is. It's like, yeah, I would live in this house because I know hasn't been any cut corners in that sense.
I think when you look at it, if you go, actually, I want to put a cheap kitchen in, I want to put a cheap bathroom in, and I'm not going to do. It's like anything, isn't it? People come in and go, oh, it's only cheap. They're still renting, but in their mind, they don't look after it. And I'm not saying people come in and reckon on the basic, but it's kind of, you're giving them insights, aren't you, into actually what you expect as a landlord.
Definitely.
Prefer from a tenant.
I think it's like expectations as well. It's like, if you give them a crap product, they're going to keep it a crap product, and also they're not going to look after it. Like that first property that I bought, the first ever deal I did, because because it was my first deal, I could have spent maybe 15,000, right? But I wanted to spend an extra 10 just to have those nicer features, you know, make sure make sure it had that curb appeal as well. And once it was all done up, like, I've seen the pictures and I've seen the reports of that house, and it still looks the same.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's like, oh, so those tenants like have not really moved out, and they've kept it the same, and they want to stay there. It's in a good area. And I just feel like that philosophy, what I did in my first project, I've kind of kept that same philosophy with like sourcing my deals and the investments that I do for investors as well. Because that philosophy, I'd like to tell my investors and clients, it's like, if you are wanting to cheap out on certain things, then you're going to pay the price later. you know, especially on the refinance side of things and especially on the rent as well. So it's like it's getting that message across, especially even for like new investors or new developers. I think it's not all about the numbers. I feel like having a long-term approach when it comes to property is really important.
Yeah, and I think it's given that you want to. It's all boils down to is whether you want to do a good job and put a good product out there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I sold my last year. Was it last year, the year before? We sold our house. Now I'd like remember my wife was like, "What are we doing? We're getting rid of everything." And I said, "No, because we're going to show it as a ship. We're going to like the couch. We bought a new couch. We bought all the tables. We bought everything new to show it as." I said, "I want it to look like actually the show home. I don't want it to look like a house that's been put on the market." Do you know what I mean? I had the drive, I painted the drive all black, I done everything, got all new pots, all new gardens. So it come to the market as a show home. So because that's when people will go and feel like they can live in it. It's them things that you do, isn't it? And it's the same with rentals, isn't it? I remember we rented out my flat, this was a few years back, and it was gorgeous, but we even went above and beyond and made it nicer. Do you know what I mean? So it was lovely. Someone wanted, and it's that thing, isn't it? Now the tenants you've got, they're in a lovely house that's been refurbished nice. They're not going to go anywhere else because there's nothing going to compare. And then also, you know that actually the likelihood of you going, "Oh, I scrimped on that, and now I've got to go and fix it. And I've got to fix it with a tenant in situ. I've got a tenant ring and not happy." It doesn't make financial sense as a long term, because the kitchens now, the best kitchens you've put in it, they'll last how many years?
Yeah.
Compared to like a bog standard. It's like we still go, and I still go out to them now, and I've been out to a few recently. Of you walk in, and it's like a wooden kitchen and magnolia walls, and it's been a buy to let for years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's like the tenants don't look after them. It's like, yeah, because it's like you've gone back in time.
I think it's quite prevalent now, especially with the Renters' Rights Bill coming into place. And I think those slumlords that don't look after the properties, those will be X'd out of the market because their rents are already quite low. They don't really fix up their own houses. And I think the newer landlords or the newer developers that have that mindset of, you know what, I don't mind putting in an extra 5-10 grand, you know, to make it that nicer property, that nicer product, then in terms of like void periods or, you know, tenants not paying, that won't be the case, or like less likely to be the case.
What do you
So
think about all the renters' right bill and stuff like that because you're in the market, you're doing it, you've got property that you're renting. How do you feel about changes?
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I think tenants do need to have like lots of rights. But the only issue that I have regarding that is that the landlords is not as protected anymore. But the thing is, it's like if you are a certain landlord, like I say, like a slumlord, and that doesn't look after their product, doesn't look after their tenant and their properties, those are the people that will be most likely affected more. With myself, I still do the due diligence, but I'm just very, very like it's like a magnifying glass now. Instead of I was just like looking around in certain areas, but now I'm very due diligent in the areas that I invest in, because obviously that just shows what type of tenant profile that you'll have in there, the type of tenant as well, you know, doing those guarantors checks, doing those referencing checks, doing as much due diligence as you can on the tenant is super important. And then after that, because you've provided them with a good property, a nice property that they'd love to live in for many years to come, and because you've had those two factors in mind regarding the tenant referencing and and making sure that the tenants are okay, and then also the area of the property, then I think you should be fine. Because housing, or we're in a housing crisis right now anyway. There's not enough houses on Rightmove to either buy or sell. To either buy or rent. So in my eyes, it's like if you're providing those really good rental properties, there'll be always somebody there to rent it off you. And that's what I've seen with the rental demand as well in the area.
What would you say the answer to the problem of not enough properties? Because I had this discussion with an investor a couple of days ago, and we were talking about it, and he was like, realistically, we don't have a property problem. I said, what do you mean? He said, the problem we have is, and I do believe it is, he said, like, building new houses is great, but the amount of empty long-term properties in each area and there's thousands, like thousands. And you think, said, so there's not a property crisis, as in there's not enough property. It's just there's a lot of the property that's sitting there empty for a long period of time, where sellers don't do. And I used to work with a lot of the local authorities, and I remember speaking to someone who he was in the empty property team, and he said the problem you have is, obviously, we can instruct a solicitor to take into court to take the property off them if it's long term sitting empty and you're not putting it back in use and stuff like that. He said, and what I've found is the solicitors will do all the bits to the point of, but they never want to take it off them. Through backlash of someone going to the press going, I had a property and the local council took it off me and sold it. So he said, he goes, from the amount of times it got to the point where we should be going to court, and then the solicitors backtracked or said something else. And he said, that's the problem. The councils don't really want to be seen to taking property off them, so they just enforce it with. And as he said, there's no point as a council, is there, if you're putting a fine on an owner and putting a charge on a house, well, they're not looking to sell it, are they? So it doesn't make a difference. He said, and I can't remember the website, but there's a website that tells you how many empty properties are in the local area, and there's thousands and thousands all over. What would you say would the answer? Is it to build more? Is it to more landlords come into the market? Because a lot of people think it's the landlord's fault that there's not enough property, but I said, well, without the landlords, there'd be less property. That's just, it's not the landlord buys a property, yeah, but their main goal is to let someone live in the property. It's not to just sit there sitting empty.
Yeah, I think there's a two-pronged approach here, where the government can do more because they never really hit the quota of building those houses every year. I think the numbers might be wrong here, but I think they try and hit, maybe like 300,000 new homes every year, but they never do. So that's obviously an issue there, where if they do try hit those quotas, then hopefully there would be more homes for families and for working professionals and people who need it. And I think what's really good these days is that, because of a strategy which I'm currently getting into, is commercial to residential, all these empty commercial buildings can be converted into residential flats, houses, whatever you may be, but using permitted development. So it's a little bit easier, that we don't really need to go through planning. So that's a strategy that I'm trying to get myself into, because there are a lot of commercial buildings, that in the northeast that are empty, especially after COVID and stuff. Potentially that could be a great strategy for other developers to look into and provide more housing in the area. But I always go back to the point is the housing has to be, something that you'd want to live in. Yeah. It's not like building a bunch of brand new builds, and then it's all crumbling apart. I don't know if you've seen, there's this TikToker where he's like a building inspector, and he goes around new builds and he starts picking it apart, these new builds, and he's going around, and then there's like the vents are not fitted correctly, the windows have like they've not sealed correctly, there's a draft coming in, he's looking at the toilet, the flooring, the kitchen, and it's all like falling apart. But this was a brand new build from a developer. And it just makes me think, it's like you've went through all that time and effort to build all these new builds, and then someone's going to put their savings into it, put their 5-10% deposit residential mortgage down. But then the quality of the housing's not there. I think that's like that's where I kind of like, if you keep wanting to do more, then great, but the quality has to be there.
Yeah, it's to be fair, it's like the house I bought now that I live in is a new build house. Now they were up for rent and up for sale, and I thought, my wife was like, "We're gonna buy it." I was like, "No, I'm gonna rent it first because I want to know what it's actually like." It's all shiny penny syndrome, isn't it? But then when you're in it, and to be fair, I'll be honest, it's even this house, lovely house, small development, but the problem with this one, and I think it happens to a lot of developers, is the overprice for the market for when they're going to sell. Like, do you know what I mean? It's the kind of like they've gone, well, it's going to be worth 450 when I complete it, it's worth 450, and it comes to it, and they're only worth 350. And do you know what I mean? It's kind of, then you can see the difference in the finishes then drop because they're not making the money that they thought they were going to make. And because I've seen it in a few developments, and even the big developers do it. It's kind of they gauge it on, well, if we sell it X, we're all right. But then if it starts dropping down, and you can see the finishes come just that little bit less, don't they, at the end? And we found it in our house. The houses themselves built brilliantly to start with. But then, like, even the carpets weren't fitted properly. You could see, do you know what I mean? That he paid a cheap carpet fitter to fit the carpets. I've got a mate of mine who's run a carpet shop for years. And I've done carpet for a good couple of years. So when I walked, I was like, but it's because they've sold for less than what they thought they were going to sell for.
Yeah.
They've kind of, and it's a tough one, isn't it? So would you get into like new build development? Is that something you'd like to do, or?
No, I would never go into new build. I'm not really a big fan of that, because the exit strategy is it's like a fantasy. The exit strategy. I like to buy existing buildings, and with those existing buildings, it's like there's already a real value there.
Yeah.
And I believe that I like to think of it in a way of, how many exit strategies do I have? The more exit strategies, the better it is. With new builds, I would just say, like, I would just stay away from it. Especially in the area that I'm in. It's obviously area dependent. A lot of the southern developers that I'm friends with, it works really well for them, because, like, comparatively, the construction cost might be the same from the north and the south. However, their end values are a lot higher than in the north. So then they have a bigger margin there that they can, have a little bit of a buffer if something goes wrong. But like I said, I think the exit strategy the way I look at it is like, if I can sell it, I can, or if I can rent it, that's great. Because the stuff that I do, on average, the end values are like 150, right? If you was to put a buy-to-let mortgage on it, then the rent will always cover the mortgage, so that's great. And then selling a house that's 150 is quite easily doable, because you only need, let's say, £15,000 to put down on a residential. So the way I've noticed that with myself personally, like, my area and where I live and the stuff that I've done, is like, it plays a big part in my mentality as an investor. If I was in London, or where there's you know, there's so many other developers that are doing so many different things. I'll probably have a different risk tolerance there. But with myself, with me being in this area, I've noticed that there is there's a beauty in the bread and butter stuff.
Yeah, it's it's the thing, isn't it? It's simple. You know the system, you know the structure, and it works. You're not going, well, I'm going to try and like recreate the wheel. It's like, I remember the developer, he, don't get me wrong, he's done well, but he was like, I'm always trying to maximize the road price. And I was like, yeah, but you're doing well, but you're going to come unstuck, because you know what I mean? You're always trying to be, his main goal was his house always sold for the most money in the road after he developed it. This is the end of Guru's episode of the Gavel Drops, mate. It's been brilliant. Thanks again.
Thank you, mate. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.